On today's podcast and video, we are going to be talking about three guys that have blown up in spring training and really boosted their stock. And I also have a little bonus segment at the end. And if you guys like it, we might keep it going. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Dinging Corners, a baseball podcast powered by Slab Stocks. I am your host, Nate, and today we're going to talk about three prospects that are taking spring training by storm. And then we're going to end it off with a little quiz because there was some interesting comments on YouTube last week, and so I was going to go in and have a quiz at the end to see if you guys are paying attention to the baseball world. But before we get into that, let's talk about the three prospects that are killing it in the minor leagues, and their card prices are up. All right, so you have spring training report, Nate's top three. Self-explanatory. Let's get into the next one. All right, so we've got Mickey Moniak, number one. Obviously, many of you will know Mickey Moniak as he was the number one pick a number of years ago by the Phillies. Kind of a surprise when they did it. And he really has not lived up to the billing of number one pick. But this spring, he's had 9 at-bats, 5 hits in 9 at-bats, including a double, a triple, 2 home runs. That's pretty incredible. 4 extra base hits out of 5 hits out of 9 at-bats. Really good. He scored 3 runs. He's only struck out twice in the 9 at-bats. He's hitting 556, 1,150s, or 1.556. That's his 556 batting average, 556 on base, and 1,556 slugging. Pretty satisfactory seeing all those numbers the same. Of course, you don't want your batting average and on base to be the same, but it's only been 9 at-bats, and that's good for a 2,111 OPS. Obviously, unsustainable, right? Never going to be sustained in the entire history of the world. That being said, it is nice to see him getting to his power, because before, if you're looking at those stats, you're seeing 2 home runs and a triple and a double. Before, he had a struggle getting to his power. Obviously, he's been given a 40 grade power as late as this year by Fangraphs, 40 game power. And a 30 game power currently. So clearly he's a little bit better than that. If he's hitting tanks, triples, doubles in spring training, he's got to have a little bit better than 30 game power. That'd probably be under 10 home runs in a year. But his highest slugging percentage of his career is 439 last year. His highest isolated power of his career was 187 last year. Or not last year, 2019. Sorry. His last full season. And so you're looking at a guy that just he's got other interesting things, usually 50 points better on base percentage than slugging. Can usually grab you a handful of stolen bases, 15, 20 in a full season. Middling walk rates, decent strikeout rates, pretty good defense in center field. But outside of that, a pretty uninteresting prospect. But if he gets to his power, he becomes more interesting, but not interesting enough where I want to spend money on him. Just because you're the number one overall pick from before doesn't mean I want to spend my money on you. And so let's look at his prices and see what other people are doing with their money and Mickey Moniak. And right here, 12/26/20. So I looked up similar cards and scrolled all the way back 3 months on eBay to find one of the first card prices I could find. And right here, you have a refractor auto, number to 499, for about what, $24? Oh, with shipping. So $24 on December 26th, 2020. Fast forward 3 months, and on the 8th of March, which was 3 days ago as of this recording, or as if you're watching it on Thursday the 11th, you've got a refractor that's sold. Somebody purposely bought this for $63.27. And if I did my math correctly, that's a 163% increase in price in 3 months on Mickey Moniak. Let that sink in a little bit. Obviously, there's probably still some hype with him being number one pick, and there's always going to be some hype if you're a guy that came in and unexpectedly hit a bunch of extra base hits like Mickey Moniak has done in 9 at-bats in spring training. That being said, there's no chance I'm spending $63 on a Mickey Moniak refractor. That's ridiculous. But here you go. Our number one guy for the week, Mickey Moniak, 163% increase. Number 2 on the week, Bobby Witt Jr. If you didn't watch it, he hit a 484-foot home run in spring training. And because of that home run, people are going crazy. Crazy. Now, it was a tank. It was absolutely launched. He's a 20-year-old. He's using a wooden bat. He's a shortstop. And he's hitting 484-foot bombs. Absolutely insane. And so let's look at the rest of his spring training stats. And you're looking at 21 at-bats, 7 hits, 2 home runs. Obviously, the 484-foot one, which is what people got excited about. 6 runs, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, a 333 average, a 364 on base, a 619 slugging, and that's good for a 983 OPS. So really good stats for a 20-year-old that didn't really play last year and barely played in rookie ball. This is his first spring training, and he is doing really well for a guy that's never faced this type of competition probably in his life. This is really on the strength of a 484-foot home run. He has no doubles. He has no triples. He has 2 home runs. Now let's look. Oh, actually, I was going to cover his stats a little bit. Now, Bobby Witt Jr., you got to remember, Mickey Moniak was the number 1 overall pick that doesn't have power, is growing into power, but still the rest of his profile isn't very interesting. Bobby Witt Jr., on the other hand, is a extremely powerful shortstop. He's got really good above average speed or plus speed. He's got plus fielding. He's got, like a plus arm. So there's nothing about him that is uninteresting except for his hit tool, right? The only thing that is an issue is his hit tool. And the only issue with that is how far will it keep him from getting up to his power constantly? How many times will he strike out? How often will he miss pitches that he can drive or should be able to drive? Now, when you're looking at current major leaguers, Kyle Lewis, also with a 40-45 grade hit tool, right? Luis Robert, also with a 40-45 grade hit tool. And it's not holding them back in the majors. I mean, Luis Robert wasn't that great at the end of the year. And if you look at his overall numbers, he had like a 101 WRC plus, which means he was 1% better than league average hitter. So, maybe it did hold him back a little bit, but it hasn't held people back from being excited to buy his cards. And that's more important to us than his actual stats. And so for Bobby Witt Jr., how much can the other part of his game play where his hit tool doesn't matter? And if we have a couple examples, I'm going to say it won't really matter. His low hit tool. I prefer not to invest in a guy like that in case they have a season where they hit like 230. But Luis Robert just hit 230 in a 60-game sample and nobody batted an eye. Right? So who really cares? Who really cares? And so Bobby Witt Jr. definitely would have been a good buy before this point, but is he going to be a good buy now? Let's find out. Let's look at prices. And on December 13th, 2020, you've got a PSA 9 Bowman Chrome Auto, base auto, sell for $221.50 shipped. Pretty hefty price for a guy that had only played in rookie ball in 2019, but he was the 2nd overall pick, so there's expected to be some hefty prices in there. That's a pretty hefty price. This is way heftier. On bids, on the 9th, 2021, March 9th, 2021, on bids, $602.20 for a Bowman Chrome Auto shipped. Not a PSA 9. I know this isn't a completely accurate portrayal because we had the PSA 9 and now we have a non-graded. And yet the non-graded is 175% increase, as long as I did my math right, over the PSA 9 that somebody spent money on to grade. That's ridiculous to me. I know people are excited about Bobby Witt Jr., but wow, that is a lot of money. Of course, we're seeing a lot of examples of guys with lower hit tools that are making most of the rest of their tools to become superstars. We named 2, Luis Robert, Kyle Lewis. And so there's no stop or saying that, oh man, this hit tool is low, I can't invest in Bobby Witt Jr. If you believe in everything else and you believe that he can get to his power, by all means, invest in Bobby Witt Jr. He's a shortstop. He's got absurd power in that bat, right? Do it if you want to, but $600 is rich for my taste. I don't think I'd be able to do it. I wouldn't have been able to do it when it's $200 for a PSA 9. I definitely wouldn't be able to do it when it's $600 for a non-graded card. That being said, he's the type of guy that you might look up by the end of the year. He does really well in minor leagues, and it's a $1,000 card, right? But you got to remember, it is Kansas City. There's only so much excitement that can happen in Kansas City. No shade at them. I live in Milwaukee. There's only so much excitement that can happen in Milwaukee. But it is a real thing. If Wander Franco was in New York, a Bowman Chrome non-auto PSA 10 would be more than like $350, right? If he lived in New York. All right. And then on to number 3, we've got Elliot Ramos. Now, I will admit, number 1, I grabbed the refractor, super refractor, beautiful card. Number 2, I will admit, I've never really liked Elliot Ramos. I've never been a believer in him. All 3 of these guys are kind of guys I've not really been a believer in. So interesting that they are all proving me wrong right now. And Elliot Ramos, Giants outfield prospect, 18 at-bats, 7 hits, 1 double, 3 home runs. Most home runs out of any of these guys. So 4 extra base hits in his 7 at-bats, 5 runs scored, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts, a 389 average with a 421 on base, a 944 slugging, and a 1,365 OPS. Now that's really good. Elliot Ramos, like Bobby Witt Jr., like Kyle Lewis, like Luis Robert, low average, big power type of guy. Or low contact, big power type of guy. Now, that being said, he's never had numbers like this. In 2019, he hit 16 home runs in 101 games, so the power is there. But 9.5 walk rate, 9.4 walk rate between the 2 levels, 25.1 strikeout rate in high A, 31.1 strikeout rate in double A. And he did not play in 2020. Now, it's conceivable that he got better in 2020 than he was in 2019, and we just didn't see it. But he has yet to have hit these numbers in his career. Walk rates are always nice, but the strikeout rates are always high. But again, Kyle Lewis, Luis Robert, and if he's in the minors and he just blows up a little bit, AA, AAA, do you even need to hold till the majors for a guy like Kyle Lewis? So Bobby Witt, or Kyle Lewis, Elliot Ramos. So Bobby Witt Jr., same way. Elliot Ramos, same way. The only difference is that Elliot Ramos plays the outfield, and he's also not particularly fast. He's got average speed, and he's not particularly good with the glove. He's got an average glove. And so they give him a 50 future value. That could be bumped up with how he's doing right now. But again, don't expect to be seeing a Bobby Witt Jr. type of guy, right? This is Elliot Ramos. And I don't think people are, because if we look at prices, we had a base auto BGS 9.5 sell for $136.50. Pretty healthy, but for a guy that's one of the top prospects in an organization like the Giants, a big organization, not unheard of. Move on to 310.21, and you've got somebody that paid $249 for this. Now, there is a difference here. Let me point it out before anybody can get riled up. You'll notice the grades in the corner there, 9.5, 9.5, 9.5, 9. 9 on the edges. This one, 9.5, 9.5, 9.5, 10 on the edges. So this is a better card. This is a true gem plus, and this is just a gem. That being said, is there really a $120 difference or $115 difference between these two cards based on one having a 10 subgrade and one having a 9 subgrade and everything else being the same? The answer to me is no. And so I can grab these and I can show the increase. Now, know that it says 82% increase if I did my math right again, but that's a little faulty because they're not quite similar cards, but they're close enough where the price increase shouldn't be that drastic for just the grade. It has to do with production. And so you've got Elliot Ramos, $245. We'll see if he can cut down on those strikeouts a little bit and make decent contact to let that power play. But he's a guy to be excited about. I still don't think I'd spend $245 on him, but I'm a little biased because I was never really in on Elliot Ramos to begin with. But those are our three guys. Those are our three movers and shakers of the spring training early on. Three prospects that are drastically increasing their value compared to what they were in December. And then lastly for today, I have a quiz for you. I have a quiz. So who am I? I am a catcher. I was first in WRC Plus among catchers with 144 WRC Plus. And these are all going to be minimum 300 plate appearances. So when you go on to Fangraphs, you can set all your qualifiers. So I took, and I should have pointed this out, 2019, 2020. So the stats are only for 2019 and 2020. Nothing before, not just 2020, but also 2019. Minimum 300 plate appearances, and these are all catching stats. So he's a catcher. In the last 2 years, minimum 300 plate appearances, and I set it at that because he had over 300, so I wanted, a baseline. A little disclaimer, if I set the bar lower on plate appearances, Salvador Perez would be at the top of a lot of these lists because he was amazing last year, and he didn't play in 2019. He does not make these lists. So take that with a grain of salt. But for those guys that played both years, here's where he leads. So first in WRC Plus among catchers with 144 WRC Plus. That's also 14th in all of baseball. First in slugging among catchers with a 574 minimum 300 plate appearances. That is also 9th in all of baseball. Second in on-base percentage among catchers with 363. Second in isolated power among catchers with 306. Sixth in walk percentage among catchers with 11.4. 8th in average among catchers with a 268. 10th in Fangraphs WAR among catchers with 2.9. 19th in K percentage among catchers with 22.2%. So I'm going to give you a second. You kind of think about this in your head and say, man, who could this be? Who could this be? I will point out a few things that will probably give it away. For starters, 300 plate appearances. He didn't have much more than that. So there's a lot of guys that had more plate appearances. If he had more, that could have been driven down, right? That could have been driven down. On the other end of the spectrum, a 2.9 F-WAR, 10th among all catchers. The next closest guy to him had 110 more at-bats. Everyone else had 200, 300, 400 more at-bats than him. If he had 400 more at-bats, he might have been second in Fangraphs WAR among catchers, third, right, instead of 10th. So there is that. And then obviously these are all top 20 stats. 19th among catchers in K rate. Obviously you're saying to yourself, that's not that impressive. There's not that many catchers. But when you set the bar at 300 plate appearances, there becomes more because a lot of guys get 300 plate appearances in a year at catcher because you only play, you're only going to play 100, maybe 10, 120 games as a catcher if you're really good, and your backup catcher is probably going to play like 40. That being said, if you've been given enough time, the answer is Will Smith. Now, I covered how I was looking to grade Will Smith cards last week, and one guy in particular was like, well, if you're grading Will Smith cards, you're grading the wrong cards. Now, that's fair. They're only like $35, $40 PSA 10s, so is there really a point to grading them? It's also fair that saying $17 to $25 isn't that big of a gap. So why do I care that much? That's fair too. It's just when it's, a $40 PSA 10, if you grade it for 17, you're still able to make like half your money after fees, or, double your money after fees. If it's 25 after fees, you're looking at significantly less. You'd be looking at like $10. So, is what it is. There isn't huge money in a guy like Will Smith. I know he's a catcher, right? And people don't love catchers. I know he's got Austin Barnes and Keibert Ruiz there. Take some catching from him. That being said, the numbers are extremely impressive. And he can also play outfield. So I wouldn't be shocked if you're going to see Will Smith play 110 games at catcher and another like 30 games in the outfield. And he'll get 140 games in the season as opposed to like 120. And his stats will be amazing. I'm sure he'll probably hit like 30 home runs, and he'll have a super high slugging. And you'll look down and you'll be like, wow, this dude's really good, not just for a catcher, but for anybody in baseball. Now, the whole age-old question of how much can he get interest in him when you've got external factors like Cody Bellinger and Corey Seager. I'm big on, if you're not the number one player on your team, you better be number two. If you're not number two, how much interest can trickle down until they get to you? And that is a major problem with Will Smith. If Will Smith was the top player on his team, there'd be much more interest. But he's got major superstars ahead of him. Major superstars ahead of him. And so the question is, how much interest can he get? And I don't know. He's got those two factors, catcher and interest, weighing against him. But what the stats say, and you can see them here, first in WRC plus among catchers, first in slugging, second in on base, second in isolated power, sixth in walk percentage, eighth in average, 10th in Fangraphs WAR. And remember, he's only had 333 plate appearances. So, it's one of those things where more plate appearances, that Fangraphs WAR is going up, and he's probably the second or third best catcher in all of baseball. And you give it a little bit of time, and I wouldn't be shocked if he's the best catcher in baseball over a full season. And so Will Smith, I know you guys were hating on that idea that Will Smith would be graded, but there is at least reasons to my madness of wanting to get him graded. Now, I'm not going to get him graded anymore because, if the interest doesn't grow, it's not going to grow much from $40, but the stats back him up as being one of the best young players in baseball, and I'm always interested in that. So that's all I got for you today. Hopefully you figured out the quiz. If you didn't, hopefully you're looking at Will Smith a little bit closer. He's got some factors playing against him, but he is definitely interesting. And also Elliot Ramos, Bobby Witt Jr., and Mickey Moniak. Three very interesting guys, three guys that are really boosting their stock. And hopefully you can find the next guy that boosts his stock. It's not always, I missed out. A couple months ago, I bought an Aaron Ashby card, Gold Wave, for $30 because he is a Brewers prospect that I'm interested in. He's a pitcher. And the last couple sold for like $65. And it really makes me feel alive. It's like, ooh, got a little bit back into prospecting. So I'd like to get back into that and make videos on it and stuff because I really got away from that. But you don't always have to be like, I missed the boat. There's always the next guy and the next guy and the next guy and the next guy, especially in prospecting. Thank you for listening to today's Dinging Corners, and I will talk to you guys again next time.